Like other local arts organizations, the Handel and Haydn Society plans to come back this fall for in-person performances. But the new season will also be a chance to encore some highlights from the past in a delayed farewell to outgoing artistic director Harry Christophers. To tell us about the lineup, including some new talent and repertoire, is the Society's president and CEO, David Snead. Thank you very much for being with us, David.
Oh, Chris, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
David, first of all, before we get to what's coming up, the past year, it has not been an idle time for Handel and Haydn Society. What have you been doing to adapt to the pandemic and even maybe look beyond that to what you can do in the future?
What have I been doing to adapt to the pandemic? Everything we could think of, just looking at last season, there were just tremendous challenges, even being able to get musicians together to play music, more than one person at a time. As the year went on, the rules opened up a little bit. We were able to do a Messiah for Our Time on WGBH at Christmas that we thought was really a landmark event. It was able to really take advantage of the opportunities, that video provides to present Handel's music in a different way, in a way that really tried to connect this masterpiece of the 18th century to the Boston of our time in the pandemic. And that was an opportunity we never would have had, without the pandemic, ironically. Also, our education program did really cool stuff with choruses all over the world. We have 7 youth choirs, and one of them developed a partnership with a chorus in Colombia, and they did some, video performances together that never would have happened. And then as the season went on, we got into doing programs that were more or less, if you will, typical concerts, but we really tried hard to make them entertaining and engaging on video. We really thought that, just turning on a camera and shooting musicians performing wouldn't be as engaging as if we could do something more that really took advantage of what you can do in video and television. So for instance, we got a host for our concerts, Emily Marvosh, who's a member of our chorus, who really was, stars born. Her next stop is CBS Sunday Morning, I think. And she introduced the works. She interviewed the musicians. After the concerts, we would have a live Q&A with musicians online. And all those were things to try to connect audiences more personally, ironically, with the musicians that we couldn't have done before. So we learned a lot through that. And we plan to continue a lot of that into the future. We will be streaming our Sunday concerts. They'll be hosted with Emily, hopefully. We'll try to do some version of a Q&A after concerts with musicians for audiences to hear from them directly, things like that. So it was a great learning experience over the past year.
I want to ask you about the outgoing artistic director, Harry Christophers. During his tenure, there was certainly a lot of attention to, historically informed performance, but also a lot of new discoveries. How would you sum up his contribution?
His contribution is historic, and I think for me personally, very, very exciting and revelatory musically. I came from the New York Philharmonic in 2015 and a series of major large symphony orchestras in my career. And I'd never really experienced period instrument performance, historically informed performance done the Harry Christophers way. And it was a breath of fresh air. The first concert I heard H&H do was a Mozart Requiem at Symphony Hall in fall of 2015. Harry was conducting it, and I'm sitting there and I turned to my wife and I said, I've never heard this piece like this before. This is totally brand new. And, the way that the period instruments really connect the music more directly with the composer's intent. And then that combined with the study the musicians do to learn how the music was performed back then, what the composer wanted. And then Harry's way of bringing it all together in a concept that is all about engagement and connection was something I hadn't seen before. Maybe we should spend a minute just talking about what I mean by period instruments. It means that studying, looking at, finding, replicating the violins, the winds, the brass that existed back at that time that the composer wrote for. This means gut strings for the violins. It means a different bow. The woodwinds are actually wood. The brass are natural horns and trumpets. And all of this really, it would be like, I don't know, trying to play Elvis, with a different kind of band that he played with back in the 50s and 60s. It just changes how you hear it. So that's what H&H does. It really connects you, I think, in the most direct way possible with what the composer intended and the excitement of the very first performance. So what Harry brings is this real commitment to turning people onto the music. I've studied him, looked at how he rehearses, how he hires musicians, how he creates programs, how he leads a concert. And it's really all about that. He hires musicians who aren't just playing the notes, but they're performers. They're all about performing and engaging. And he rehearses them in a way that really brings out the meaning of the music and the excitement of it, in addition to just playing the notes correctly. And that all comes out in a concert in a way I'd never heard before, to be totally honest with you. And I think he's created a new definition of what this music can sound like.
Well, for example, you've got a couple of Beethoven symphonies, number 6 and 7, on the schedule for the coming year. People have heard these, at Symphony Hall with the BSO and some other world-class orchestras. But at Handel and Haydn, we're talking about, is this like Beethoven unplugged? What if people are afraid there's not going to be enough heft in that music? What would you tell them?
It is faster, lighter, brighter, more energetic, but not without emotion or pathos or intensity. I think that, actually you mentioned those two works, that's part of a way we approach the season, was to have works like this that we do extremely well. We do differently. I mean, obviously the way our friends at BSO do Beethoven is phenomenal. This is a different approach that I think would be very interesting for people here in Revelatory, like as it has been for me. But that's paired with, the Beethoven 6, for instance. We're doing, on the other half of the program, a new piece for us by a mid-1800s French female composer, Louise Farrenc, who was very well known in her day, kind of neglected by history ever since. And the conductor for that program, Lawrence Eckleby, who's French, she's bringing this music over. It'll be an H&H premiere. The piece is very exciting. If you were to think about, somebody, a reference point, you might say Brahms and Schumann-ish, but dramatic, exciting, very well written, well known in its day, but we're bringing it back. So that's a concert where you've got the Beethoven 6 done in this fresh way, plus a premiere of a piece by a composer 160 years ago. Same thing applies to the opening concert, Chris. We do Vivaldi Four Seasons, which is really in our wheelhouse. We do that piece like nobody else, particularly with Ace Lanosky, our concertmaster, who really plays it with fire. But we're opening with pieces we talked about before by Jonathan Woody, who's a contemporary composer in Brooklyn, who does an interpretation of music by Charles Ignatius Sancho, who is a very, very interesting guy, born on a slave ship, son of slaves in 1729-ish, we don't know for sure. He's orphaned, he's brought back to London, where he becomes a slave for a family in London. While he's there, he meets the Duke of Montagu. Duke of Montagu says, wow, this guy actually has something going on. So he starts, giving him books to read, just teaches him music, etc. Sancho eventually escapes from his family and goes to live with Duke of Montagu, where he, by the way, very probably met Handel. They were there at the same time, so I don't have evidence of it, but people tell me that's very likely. He goes on to become a published author. He wrote tons of letters that were published in newspapers at the time. After he died, those letters became bestsellers when they were published. He wrote great, great music. He was the first Black to publish classical music. He was the first Black to vote in the parliamentary election. He was a real hero in his time, big abolitionist. And the music, of course, fell by the wayside as time went on. I personally am so excited that we can bring this remarkable man's music to the 21st century, and the legacy of this merchant, escaped slave in London in the 1760s and 70s lives on to our day. And to be able to introduce Sancho's music to audiences today, I think is something I'm really proud of.
Coming back to maybe the center of the repertoire, you've got some works, and I think these might be including works that Harry Christopher is really care about. You've got the St. Matthew Passion, Haydn's The Seasons, the Teresa Mass. And what about the vocal element here? Because it's important in all of those works.
Yeah, well, somebody who really knows the choral world came to hear H&H in my first year here. And I asked her, I said, these guys, they sound really good to me. They sound like no chorus I've ever heard. And she's a major national choral figure. And she said, David, it's a Maserati, the H&H chorus. It is just such a shining, incredible ensemble. They went to New York to Lincoln Center to perform the Messiah with the New York Philharmonic in 2019 and brought the house down. I don't think those audiences had heard a Baroque chorus like that before. And the sound they make, it's 32, 34 singers, but they've all been handpicked by Harry. They've been trained over time. And now after 12 years with him, this is truly an elite ensemble. And people tell me it's one of the, if not the very best chorus in America these days. Harry wanted this year to show off what he's done with the chorus. So the Messiah, of course, is something that they've done every year that Harry's been here. And it's at such a peak. When you hear it, it's just fleet and it's fast and it's moving. It's exciting, just spectacular. The Teresa Mass in January is a piece that Harry, by the way, is one of the best Haydn conductors you're ever going to see. He's been doing a series of Haydn Masses for CDs, and this will be the close of that cycle. And then in May, he ends with the Haydn Creation, which is a piece that he feels very, very strongly about. His chorus and orchestra do extremely well. And I think it's going to be quite a way for him to go out. And I'll tell you, we're planning the season as we go, given the fact that things are changing, with the pandemic and coming out of it. So there will be additional performances to be announced coming up, hopefully with Harry and the chorus that we can talk about in the future.
Well, you have some guest conductors, rather, and I almost imagine this is a tryout, even though you might deny that it really is. But tell us a little bit about the people coming in here who maybe we haven't seen before.
Well, they're really, really exciting. I'm very excited for them to work with our musicians and meet our audience. Lawrence Eckleby, coming in November to do the Beethoven in the front we talked about earlier, leads a period instrument ensemble in Paris and Insular Orchestra and Accentus Chorus. And then in December, we have someone else from Paris, Raphael Pichon, coming to lead us in a program of Bach for Christmas. And he leads a period instrument ensemble called Pygmalion in Paris that's really getting quite a lot of renown. And this actually is going to be his US debut as a conductor. We have Jonathan Cohen, who's a Brit, coming to conduct Vivaldi and C.P.E. Bach. He's been with us once before. He conducted the last concert of the 1920 season before we shut down. So we're really excited to have him back. And then Václav Lux, who's Czech, and he'll bring a new piece, a piece by Dvořák, again, not contemporary, but from the 1800s. Dvořák was a contemporary of Beethoven's, was a friend of his, studied with him, lived in Vienna at that time. We've never done his music, so Václav is going to bring that for us and also do Beethoven's Seventh. But I think if you look at them together, it really is, a survey of the very, very best Baroque, pure instrument, classical conductors in Europe, all coming over next season.
Finally, we should mention, if people want some more details, either about the concerts or some of the live streaming that's planned as well, where can they find that?
The website is handelandhaydn.org. It's just Handel and HAYDN.org. And the phone number is 617-262-1815.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure, Chris. It's great to see you.
Great to meet you. David Snead from the Handel and Haydn Society. We'll have more news in just a moment.